still watching Daybreak coming to you live from studio here in the nation's capital. Abuja. Now, time to look at what the papers are saying on their front pages, and we have Dr. Constance Ikoku to lead us on. Glad to have you join us, Constance.
Thank you, Ndi. Good morning, and good morning, Adesua and Nkechi.
Morning, Dr.
Well,
Koko.
we'll begin with this day. No, before that, we have to introduce our guest. Our guest today to look at the headlines with us is Eniola Akinkotu. He is the Chief International Correspondent of the Africa Report. Well, we'll begin with this day newspaper. CBN, no retirement date for old Naira banknotes. Remain legal tender indefinitely. Lokpobiri, federal government targets doubling of 37 billion barrels oil reserves with improved exploration. And in Enugu State, Mba approves 80,000 Naira minimum wage for Enugu workers. It's effective from this month. Shatima cancels Chogum trip as plane's windshield is damaged at JFK Airport in New York. The Commonwealth Health Government Summit is taking place in Samoa. Now the Vice President is unable to attend. The President has approved a ministerial delegation to represent Nigeria there. Well, let's talk about the Commonwealth. There are arguments for and against its relevance today. The pros, for instance, people talk about technical assistance, diplomatic platform, trade cooperation, but for the cons, there's limited economic impact, inequitable power dynamics, and it's rather of a symbolism rather than substantive, people think. Eniola, welcome to the program. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, Doctor, you're very right on that. There's this argument that the Commonwealth has outlived its usefulness. You know, some scholars on foreign affairs tell you that, look, since 1986, when sanctions were imposed on apartheid South Africa, we've not really seen any major thing that the Commonwealth has done. And that's already evidenced again by the way, you know, South Africa and India have treated it. This year, the BRICS summit coincides with the Commonwealth summit as well. And you have you know, South African president and the Indian prime minister saying that, I mean, their people are saying that they are focused on BRICS at the moment. So it doesn't really seem like there's anything major happening anymore at the Commonwealth, apart from the fact that, of course, after this summit, or at this very summit, they're going to pick a new Secretary General. And sadly, Nigeria is not even in the race. You have just Gambia, Ghana, and Lesotho. So I don't really see anything major coming out of this, you know, Chogum, sorry.
So, Ndi, you know, to remain relevant, the Commonwealth may have to modernize in such a way that it's able to address the real economic and political needs of member states. If not, it's just a talking shop. What do you think?
Well, some will say that, some others may not agree with it, but the main issue now the Commonwealth is the question of reparation. I'm sure we'll get to talk about that more, but there's the question of reparation. While Starmer and Charles III, the king, is saying, let's not look back. Let's go forward. Look for creative ways. Learn the lessons. Look for creative ways, as it were, to disagree to agree. You know, while the rest of the countries at the Commonwealth are saying, no, Europeans are tending towards that. They're looking at things that have to do with slave trade, which of course Britain or UK was part of, that no, we should talk about them. There'll be an open forum. It's not on the agenda, but there'll be an open forum where everyone can say what they want to say about reparations, but Kestama and the king are saying, let's move forward and not go backwards. We'll see what gives, but whether the Commonwealth is important or not important, or is playing it depends on which side of the divide you're on, and what you stand to gain and what you don't stand to gain.
Well, we'll see whether they're able to pack a punch after the summit. The Guardian this morning. Misery harsh policies driving Nigerians to desperate choices. FG begins reform of obsolete laws. Nigeria records 83 poliovirus type 2 cases. Helicopter crash, NSIB begins probe as search continues for missing passengers. Tinubu others cost-cutting measures as Senate begins screening on Tuesday. The president has restricted ministers, ministers of state, and heads of agencies to a maximum of 3 vehicles in their official convoys. There's also 5 security personnel only for them. Military, paramilitary, and security agencies will have theirs reduced as determined by the national security advisors. I mean, this is a good start, but we need further cuts. It needs to go much deeper. It's nearly not enough, Eniola.
Yeah, I followed some arguments on social media yesterday about this. You know, so many describe it as a drop in the in the ocean. You look at it. The president is operating the largest cabinet in the Fourth Republic. 48 ministers. You know, the constitution says it's 36, you know, that every state should produce at least 1 minister. So that's 36. If you add FCT, that's 37. And a lot of people were already arguing that, you know, that's even too much. And now the president has added what? About 11 more. So that's about 48 ministers. And he's created more ministries too. You know, look at the Ministry of Livestock Development that he just created, for instance. Many thought that, look, since the Ministry of Agric already has 2 ministers, a minister and minister of state, why not just take one of them? Maybe the minister of state redeploy him to the newly created livestock ministry. But the president didn't do that. He left that and then appointed someone there again. And then there are so many who argue that, look, where is the Orosori report? If you're really about cutting the cost of governance, you gave a deadline, you announced it, and you said there's a deadline for it. I think it was 8 weeks or so. The time has lapsed. You've not heard anything about it. And then again, coming from a president who just a few weeks ago bought a presidential jet worth over $100 million. You know, so it seems he's sending mixed signals. In one breath, you are, increasing the cost of governance, and then in another breath, you're then saying, okay, you're telling ministers that they should cut the number of the size of their convoy and reduce the number of the security personnel that follow them. So it seems, a lot of Nigerians are not really convinced about this.
Nkechi, Nigeria will be compelled to learn how to live like a low-medium income country that it is. This cost-cutting measures does not rest at the federal alone. The states also will be expected to enact similar measures, isn't it?
That's actually a very important point. We always tend to focus on the federal, which is important, but you also have to take it down to the state level, to the local level. Everyone has to be on board with cost-cutting measures of the government. And I want to be optimistic here. Yes, it may be all about optics, but it's a small step in the right direction. Now, I don't know, I might be wrong, I don't understand. Is it just an order? Do they have to follow it? Is this something that can be made into sort of an executive order or a standard government policy that, look, this is what ministers, or this is what heads of MDAs have to follow when it comes to...
The president says it takes effect immediately.
It takes effect immediately, yes. And so they have to follow it. It's a little step in the right direction. However, I agree with you. I agree with Kinko too. You have to look at other means of cutting governance. Rosarian reports, we have to implement that. We've been talking about it for a long time. We have to look at salaries, allowances, budgets, esticos. They're just a lot of things. And we actually have to look out to see if the ministers are following. One minister that I have personally seen their convoy is the FCT minister. And his convoy is like the convoy of a governor or a vice president. So we'll watch out and see. We're all in Abuja, and see how the heads of MDAs are following this directive. And if they're following it, adhering to it properly, and then it just makes way to see that when other deeper cost-cutting measures come into play, we'll see how they follow it effectively, because implementation is what actually gives, not on paper. Right.
Daily Trust. Why blackout will persist in the north, according to TCN. FG flags off construction of Sokoto-Badagry superhighway. That highway we've been hearing about, well, it's about to take off. Three killed as helicopter crashes in rivers. Tinubu limits ministers' convoy to 3 vehicles. We've just discussed that. Nigeria joins BRICS as partner country. It's not a full membership yet. BRICS is an acronym for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. The gathering is aimed to foster security, cooperation, trade development, and investment. Ministry of Foreign Affairs says Nigeria hopes to be a full member within 2 years. I mean, it's about time. Nigeria can't afford to be missing at a table in a gathering of the global South. You know, we are the largest black nation in the world, so we have to be at that table, you know, no matter what it is, Aniola.
Oh yeah, you're right about it. Nigeria's been, I think, tried last year to, you know, join BRICS, and then we're hearing what do you call it? Is it partner or something? I don't really understand what you know that designation really is. Last year, when we made our first pitch, it was that, oh, Nigeria is the largest black nation, Nigeria is the largest economy in Africa, and now Nigeria has, you know, fallen down the pecking order. Nigeria is now number 4, you know, behind South Africa, behind Egypt and Algeria. We tried something like this with China then. I think the yuan swap deal, I don't even know why the thing failed. So if Nigeria is serious about joining BRICS, I think they need to go back to the drawing board, you know, see how this really works for our people. Because we're not really a producing nation. Apart from oil, Nigeria doesn't really, you know, export anything. And so if you're not a big exporter, how does this really work for you?
That's what. A lot would depend on how we're able to navigate that environment and harness whatever friendship, you know, that is there. There is friendship, definitely. There are opportunities. I believe. What do you think?
You say, you're right, like everybody has said with all the topics you have raised this morning. Nigeria needs all the economic partnerships and friendships she can get at this time, particularly the kind of economic partnership and friendship that does not strangulate her in the guise of providing her with loans and grants and all of that to survive. And if you understand, like you have said, BRICS initially formed in 2006 with Brazil, Russia, India, China, later expanded to include South Africa in 2010. And since then, they've accommodated more nations, now representing about 46% of global population. So that's a lot. BRICS now has, even with the partner nations, Akiko was saying, what's that designation? What we do know is that Nigeria and the 12 others that were added yesterday in Kazan, Russia as partner nations is that they will not have full rights as membership. They will have only selective participation in BRICS as for now, and they will not have voting rights. We also know that as partner nations, they have the potential to become full BRICS member. And like you said, the Foreign Ministry of Nigeria has indicated that Nigeria hopes to do that in the next 2 years. What is BRICS all about? BRICS and its friends is just to provide an alternative economic fortune for these developing economies to counterbalance the West. There are conversations about development banks. There are conversations about a common currency to also, of course, rally against the dollar and reduce the reliance on the US dollar. What we see with the loans that have come from the global north is that they strangulate these developing economies. And particularly, let me just round up. Watching the closing press conference by Russian President Vladimir Putin yesterday and the celebrations, I think that Vladimir Putin was the happiest with this summit yesterday, making more friends than foes, and he's more confident that he has majority of the world with him at a time he's facing the West and fighting a war in Ukraine.
Great summary at this one. The Punch. Presidency defends Tinubu as FG slashes ministers' vehicles aids. Senate okays 15% state funding for regional development commissions. There was a bit of a debate in the Senate over how to fund the new development commissions that we have all across the country. 15% is deducted from statutory allocation to states. Some senators argued this may lead to litigation by state governments. But Senate President says constitutionally, the National Assembly is empowered to appropriate funds. either from the Consolidated Revenue Fund or Federation account. So this 15% will come from the Consolidated Revenue Fund. As we can see from the Cabinet reshuffle, Ministry of Niger Delta is now the Ministry of Regional Development. But hopefully this is effective and not another waste of funds, Eniola.
You know, I'm not really excited about these regional intervention agencies that are springing up now every month. You know, the NDDC was the first, which started in 2000, and a lot of people supported it because of the injustice that had been done to the Niger Delta. But look at what the NDDC has become, more or less a cesspool of corruption. There was a federal government committee investigatory report in 2020 that stated that between 2000, when it was created, to 2020, that was 20 years, over $20 billion in Naira equivalent anyway, had been disbursed. And over 13,777 projects were compromised. So that tells you how this agency has been mismanaged. Now you are creating more for reasons I really do not understand this Me Too. There seems to be some sort of Me Too movement going on. There was NDDC, then NEDC, now the Southwest Development, South-South Development. Look, you have, there are some states that are in two commissions. So Abia, for instance, Ondo, for instance, they are in NDDC, and at the same time, they are in Southwest Development Commission. Now, going to this, this debate at the Senate yesterday, where they've approved 15% deducted from the Consolidated Revenue Fund, there is a court judgment, a federal high court judgment, in the case of Rivers State versus Federal Republic of Nigeria. In 2022, there was a judgment delivered by Justice R. Mohammed, which stated that, look, you cannot deduct funds meant for states to fund an organization that is not expressly stated in the Constitution. It was Wike at the time who instituted that suit when the government was deducting money from FAC to fund the police trust fund. Now the Senate has done this again. You're going to see that most likely one of the governors that doesn't agree with what has happened is going to go to court. And at the end of the day, to be stopped.
Right.
So when they were creating these agencies, why didn't they think of other ways how these agencies were going to be funded when they went on this spree? So I think there's going to still be a lot of legal fireworks ahead.
Definitely. And I like how when you said Me Too, everybody's Me Too. We're going to see more development commissions. This is what it is now. Let's look at the international headlines for you. Daily Graphic. Prioritize development plan over manifestos. An economist said to parties in Ghana they're having elections soon. And, you know, there's all sorts of, in Nigeria, for instance, is the 12-point development agenda, 24 points, and then we have the renewed hope, which some would say renewed shege, you know, but it says, you know, manifestos are nothing. You have to have a national development a plan that you follow. Cities in South Africa, Siya Kolisi, the downside of fame. Kolisi is a South African rugby star. He was the captain of the national rugby team in the World Cup in 2019. He was married, or is married to a white South African woman, Rachel, and now they are divorced. The story goes that South Africans saw this marriage as a symbol of the Rainbow Nation, but they are shocked that they are divorcing. Both have also shared that they have been abused a lot on social media. So that's the downside of fame. I'll take all the stories and we can just quickly analyze them. Well, as we can see, the Rainbow Nation, racial tensions continue to have a place in South Africa. The Times, King hints at discussions on legacy of slave trade. Ahead of the Commonwealth Summit, King Charles is expected to tell representatives that the part of history that is unsavory must be recognized. At the same time, they want to talk about contemporary challenges. Then the Washington Post, less than 2 weeks to the election, a couple of stories on Donald Trump. Senior advisors warn he could deploy troops against Americans. A former mother says he groped her years ago. And finally, Trump compares migrants to trash insult-filled rallies. Also, abusing migrants, this is someone whose wife is a migrant and still speaks with an accent. Ndi.
It's not just that. He's calling America, what did he call America? A baggage of can or something like that. I hope that when others begin to refer to America as that, Trump won't take offense. It's quite interesting how you want to lead a nation like America, and you're basically, suggestions are that Americans are more likely to cause havoc in America than the migrants, who of course will be making sure that they obey the law. So, and then the question of being groped. Well, this election, we'll see how it goes. Trump is the way you wonder. I mean, his wife had at a point said to him, "Why don't you act presidential?" You know, and that speaks volume.
Well, Nkechi, any thoughts before we close? And at this one, we have less than a minute.
Just a quick thought on the U.S. election. While Donald Trump obviously goes ahead in his rallies to talk about illegal migration, give Joe Biden and Kamala Harris different names. On the other side, you have Kamala Harris with her own campaign sort of strategy, making it lively, coming out with the big wigs, former President Barack Obama, Bruce Springsteen. The other time they had Eminem, and you know Eminem does not come out for anybody. And I think in the next rally in Houston, they might have Beyonce, and Beyonce does not come out for anybody as well. So she's taking that approach of joy, just bringing joy to the people in her own campaign.
At this way, you have the last word quickly.
It's a lot to say, so I'm just going to let that slide till next week. Thank you so much, Dr. Constance Koko, for always reviewing the papers with us, and Eniola Akikotu, our guest analyst for this beautiful Friday morning in Nigeria's capital of Abuja. That's all we have to offer to you this morning on Daybreak. Remember, the morning show is up next. What's Trending is at 10:30 a.m. West African time with OG Okpe. I am Adesua Omorwan. Good morning.
And I am Ndi Amogo, thanking you for watching.
Goodbye, I am Kechi Nana.